Hi, folks. My name is J.M. Erlinson, and I'm a transformation engineering lead here at Software AG and a specialist in the ARIS platform. And today we're going through our series, Help, I'm an ARIS admin, how to support your first ARIS project or instance. This series is focusing on a lot of the basic tasks that an ARIS administrator might have to do to get their environment up and running. As a note for you, Software AG is always a great resource to go for all the tips and tricks you might want on how to make ARIS really sing for you and your organization. And today, we're tackling the very first topic that we're going to go through in this series, which is taking a look at what it means to create and maintain group structures. So over the course of this video, you're going to get a sense of what group structures are, why they're important, how to create your own, and some examples and ideas of how we might lay them out. So first and foremost, what are group structures? So groups in ARIS are just another way that we use or say the word folder. We use group, it's just a different terminology because it actually means a lot more than just folders in ARIS. They do a lot more than just a Windows Explorer or a SharePoint folder would. First and foremost, ARIS groups are used to contain content. As in your database isn't just a big pool in which you throw a bunch of stuff. ARIS is actually a really structured environment where you want to make sure that you break down and encapsulate both your models and your objects in their particular areas that they're supposed to be. A second is, I did separate models and objects because it's really important. Groups do allow you to contain information at different levels of permissions. As in, you can contain models where you could modify and move around the objects on the model in one group that could be accessed by a business group or a working group or some individuals who are looking to do design. But the objects can be contained in separate groups to be able to be maintained and kept away from change by any user. And be able to be accessed only by architects and things like that. We'll talk about that more when we look at building object libraries and bringing in reusable content. And so you can contain those in different groups. The third thing that groups do, and it's something that's really, really important, is groups are where all your permissions are stored. So, or the level at which all the permissions are stored. So when we get to user management and access control, you'll see that when I access and allocate permissions, they happen at a group level. So you have to create group structures to be able to subdivide the database into who can access for read, write, delete version on different places, different content. So that's really important. And lastly, groups are a really easy navigation tool and context setting tool that a lot of people use. And so let's take a look at what groups look like. And once again, I'm working in ARIS Architect. This is the kind of thing you could also do in ARIS Connect. ARIS Connect does have this repository button, which will open up your models and objects, and as well as all of your group structures. So you can create those groups here in ARIS Connect. But for ease of use, and I also just happen to like the fact that you can drag and drop content in the navigation pane in ARIS Architect. I'm going to be using Architect for this and a lot of the content we're going to be talking about this series. So let's take a look at an example. This is the United Motor Group. We lay out the groups by what they are: strategy, processes, organization, systems, data, products, risks. And underneath each of these, there are subgroups that help to contain and encapsulate what they're building. So for instance, under the process architecture, I'm going to have all my different types of processes. And under the core processes, I'm going to have a list of all my core processes. Now, once again, these are groups. They contain models and objects that would be relevant to those particular groups. Now, we have a database we've created that's blank over here in my demo database. And how do I get started with it? So the easiest way to do things is to right-click and choose New Group. Now, you want to do this before your users get in, because once your users get in, they're going to start putting content in. Once they start putting content in, well, either they're going to have to be managing that content, making sure it gets to the right group, or you're going to have to be. So I would suggest making sure that you subdivide things right off the bat. And the easiest way to do things is we're going to subdivide this into pretty much two categories. Category number one is our library. That's something we're going to be talking about in a subsequent video, but you'll be maintaining that. And you'll be promoting information to that. And some of that can be done later on through automation, and that there's a more advanced conversation around that through ARIS process governance, which I would encourage you to take a look into. But this library is going to be where we contain all of our reusable knowledge. So for instance, I might create a group called 1.1 organization. 1.2, applications. And another example, 1.3, data. Sure, whatever I want. This is the sort of thing that I'm going to keep in my library. This is an area that you may or may not, probably on the may not side, want to give your users access to write into off the bat. Because this is something that you'll probably be importing content into, which we'll get into in the importing video. And it's handy to be able to have this as a clean environment where you can put things. And the next thing, number 2, is we're going to do 2.processes. Now, this is going to be where all the content goes that your users are bringing in. And now you're going to want to create a group structure here that clearly delineates between business groups that would have separate teams or separate people working on this content simultaneously. Perfect example of that is if I'm looking at an enterprise context, I might have 2.1 business domain 1. So this would be like, you know, this is our business domain. This is the people who are working on all of our supply chain. Okay, 2.2 business domain 2. This is all the people who are working on finance processes. Okay, cool. So these are all of our total sort of they're tied together through interfaces and through calling each other in shared services, but they're separate and people are going to be working on it. It's HR, this is finance, this is supply chain, this is operations, all these different things. Conversely, if you're working on an ARIS project, you might want to break these down instead by work teams. So 2.3 work team 1. So they might have a set of processes that work team would be working on. And if you know what those processes are off the bat, particularly if you can do things like import, you might want to even create something very nice for them, which is 2.3.1 process 1. And now they've got this nice structure that they can start to work on. And they never have to worry, oh, well, where do I create my model? Well, the answer is you create it right here. Create your model underneath that group that I've set up for you. And then you'll be applying your permissions at this level. And we're gonna show that in a subsequent video, but at least you'll be able to sort of give each person their environment in which to work and protect the content you want to protect later. So this is an example of creating a group structure. It's really important. I would suggest doing it once again before your users get in, but it's not very hard. It took me a couple of seconds to do, and it'll take you a couple of seconds to do. As a note for you, if you get something wrong, like for instance, if I did this here and I put 1.4 risks, and I went to the wrong place. Oh, shoot. I can just left click and drag to move it to the right area. And as I said, that's why I like ARIS Architect for doing this sort of management. In ARIS Connect, you'd have to do copy or cut and paste of the folders between environments. So this is creating group structures. It's really important. It's really easy. It's really fast. And it's one of the jobs you'll have to do right off the bat. I'm J.M. Erlandson. And I'm hoping you'll stick with me. Please leave likes, shares, comments on all these videos, either through ARIS community or the learning portals, or however you access this information. We love to get feedback. This video series, once again, came about as a result of feedback from the first couple of tutorials. And I'm excited to see you throughout this process into ARIS administration nirvana. So thank you so much for your time, and we'll see you in the next video.